Jeff,
Yeah.
I'm going to try and sort out your mess when I'm going. Oh, God.
There's still two of you.
Right, okay.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. Right, okay. Right, is that
Yeah.
sorted?
Yeah, I've muted Anne.
Yeah, you've
Okay.
muted both of you. You muted both of them, you silly woman.
She's gone now. Where's she gone?
Oh, God, Jess,
It's in two places.
yeah, Jess, I'm going to leave this to you now, and I will see you next week. My lecture went perfectly today. There
Oh
wasn't
God, I gotta go. It's terrible.
Oh my God! I gotta go as well. Oh my God! I gotta go.
Just
Anne?
leave the meeting.
Oh, thank God.
I think it's sorted. That's fine.
Yeah, because I just muted her again. Jess, I'm going to leave this to you now. So I'm going to go. So I will. I'm just going to see what's in the chat box. It says treasures in Wales. That's what you're doing today. So I'm going to go. Anyone want to ask me anything, Richard? Anyone? Okay.
No, you're all right.
Jess, I'll leave it to you. Pat, I will see you on Tuesday, and Dan, I'll see you on the moon. Okay, everyone's gone to the moon. Anyway, Jess, over to you. Take care.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Take care.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Starting now. Right, and just take my video off for it. You're right, Anne. Oh, bless her. She looks scared. If I remove the one that's making a noise, because if I remove the one that there's no camera, maybe that'll work.
There we are. That should work.
So there you go. It should work now, Anne, if you unmute yourself. Oh, she's still on mute. Oh, there you go.
There, she's got it.
All right.
Perfect. We sorted it. I had to figure out which one was working or not because they were both making noise at one point. But I'm glad we got there. Technology is fantastic, but it can have its mess up sometimes. It's really frustrating. How is everyone this week?
Okay.
All right, except for my bruises all over.
Oh,
My
Oh,
hands and
Anne.
everything. I
What
had iron. They gave me an iron infusion today, but they couldn't find any vein to put it in.
Oh no.
oh dear.
So I did get it in eventually. So I should be bouncing around now.
Good. I'm glad that nothing bad happened in that sense.
No.
That they were helping you, not that you've been getting into fights or something, Anne.
Falling down steps.
Oh, I had 3 nurses to myself.
Oh, lovely. A lot of attention. No, I'm glad you're better, and hopefully you get more energetic and better as time goes on.
Yeah.
Just rest up for now. But have you got any archaeology news this week?
Well, only I was interested in that piece that was that you put on about St. David's. You know, those the sort of graves. Well, it's been an ongoing thing, really, hasn't it? Because the graves were found like after a storm. Then now they've done a bit more digging, and they found that they were like a lot of babies there, and they can't quite understand why. You know, why there's a lot of, it's like a baby graveyard, you know. And that's one thing. And then there's a guy challenged me on Bridgend Archaeology about the DNA they found about the Etruscans, and he was saying that they don't think they're particularly from Greece anymore, that they seem like the DNA seems very local, like local Italian, you know, well, in Italy. But this guy said, oh, but I don't like to use DNA when you're talking about a culture of people. And I thought, I don't know if they were culturally, you know, like we, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think
I'm really out on it. I don't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, I think what I can gather from that is that, for example, they've released recent research, for example, on Vikings, and have found that it wasn't a race of people. It was more of a a group of people that identified with that, and maybe that's what he's trying to argue, that it wasn't. So if that makes sense.
I think you're right. I think that we know a lot about their like culture and everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they came from one particular place, I suppose.
I think we tend to distance ourselves from people in the past. I think everywhere that we go it is quite diverse. You will have people trading.
It does seem that way. Yeah.
So I think it's more easier for us now to just hop onto a plane and just go somewhere. Whereas back then it'd probably be a nice strong boat and hope that you get there alive.
Yeah. So I'm thinking whether to go to Ireland on the boat or the plane.
Plane. But I came back on the plane when there was a storm. It was awful. We were stuck in the air for a little bit longer. Yeah, it was awful.
Oh, it's very north. Yeah, it is very north. You don't realise how north it is.
Oh, I realised when I was there. Honestly. Thank you, Anne. Pat, anything this week that has caught your attention?
No, sorry.
No, that's fine. Richard?
No, it was quite an interesting programme on the Trojan Wars. I don't know whether it's been on before.
Oh,
that's quite interesting.
Ooh, no, I'll quickly type this down into my docs.
When's that on? What site is that on?
I think it was on Sky.
Oh,
I'm terrible. I can't remember now if it's on Sky or Channel 4. I've sort of gone through so many things this week, sort of trying to download things. I've done a lot to count what it was. It was like two separate programs, all on them excavating what they think is Troy.
Oh, yeah.
And another city on mainland Greece.
Ooh.
Was believed to have been built by the Trojans.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, apparently they reckon that when the Greeks destroyed Troy, they took a load of prisoners and imprisoned them in Greece. Then after they'd imprisoned them for so long, they virtually gave them a piece of land and said, build your own settlement here, which they did. And apparently then there's a lot of Roman remains there because the Romans had this sort of belief that they were they were Trojans. They had the same, because they believed that the Greeks were really dishonorable and the way they fought and everything. And that the Trojans were like, that's how you should be. So the Romans got it into themselves that they were, their forebears were Trojans. So they used to visit this city, and there were statues of Hadrian and another, I can't think of the other one, Claudius, I think. Statues of Romans there that they found, that was the first thing they found excavating. Then they went down further and found the remains of this older city, which was sort of dated about 40, 50 years younger, the sort of thing, than Troy. Really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll look into that because that sounds really interesting. Definitely at my street, and I know my mum would happily sit there and watch it with me, so I can have the big TV to watch that on. Thank you for that, Richard. We'll get into today. It's a mixture of things. I've said that it's treasures of Wales, but it's what I think are treasures of Wales. I saw some of them yesterday. I went on a little journey to St Fagans in my spare time. It was quite late anyway, so the school children were leaving to go back home, and it was just quiet. It was lovely. I've never been to St Fagans so quiet before in my life, and we had a relax there. Oh, sorry, I've got a pop up on my screen. We had a relax there, and I just took everything in at my own pace, which was lovely. But my favourite part was the galleries at the beginning. there's two different galleries. So one's it's got a political sort of feel to it, and heritage and identity in one room, and some of the displays were they were really very simple, but they spoke a message, such as the clock from Aberfan, that was just in a box on his own, nothing else, and it was just, I think it said all that it needed to say just looking at that. But that was a good room. But the other room that we went into was full of different artifacts. I saw the cast copy of the Pavilan cave discoveries as well. And that was really interesting to see, and all the prehistory that they have in the museum is really impressive. And some of the things that we will be talking today were in that display. I haven't put all of them in, but it was just nice to go there. I think a lot of people miss the galleries because they're so focused on the buildings, and the buildings are important, but I go nearly every year, so I think it is one of those places where I try and get out and actually try and see if there's anything new. But the Vulcans going up in St Fagans, it's looking great already. You can see the front of it. That was a pub in Cardiff, and they have a medieval court, royal court, being put into there as well from Anglesey, which is quite interesting. So it'd be exciting to see that as well. And I know they have a police station popping up too. So they've got some lovely little gems already, and I think they're adding some really fantastic ones as well. But I think what I saw from being there, it's a place where I think I just love the feel of it. It's all Welsh history, and it's really interesting just to see little things to do with Wales and it be on my doorstep. But it shows to me how Wales is rich in the archaeology, and it's showing us more than just Wales, but Wales's connections with other areas such as Vikings and Ireland and England and beyond, and then how we get to the more modern time where our connection is just we're well connected. And that's something that I've been focusing on for a while anyway, with my course. But this is something that I thought this is a nice display of it. The way that they showed everything is in chronological order. There's just a range. I was just gobsmacked at how well it was done, it's because it was differently to when I went before the pandemic. But I call them treasures of Wales because they would range from different things. You do have gold hoards here, you do have silver hoards, and but I mixed in a few other things that I thought were nice treasures, such as tombs and even just lead weights. And some of these are proudly on display in St Fagans, like I said, and they've been given a lovely display. And I think, to me, the reason why I call them treasures is that we can learn so much from them, yet online there's so little written about them. And so my argument is that they're treasures because if we looked into them more rather than just saying, oh, well, this is what we found, having more of a discussion about them, maybe that will show how valuable it is. But at the moment, they're in St Fagans, proudly shown on display. And I think it shows that we need to discover more. We need to discuss in depth more what's in the archives as well. The one thing I could criticise is that some of the things in the gallery in St Fagans Museum didn't have much information onto it. And I was like, oh, you could go into depth more. And that's what I just kind of felt bad about. One of the tombs that I found, it said a Roman woman. I was like, okay, that's really good. And it was a fantastic lion next to it. And when I looked into it more, I couldn't actually find in my photos that they said where it was from and all that, but I found it online, thank God. They do have a fantastic discussion online, but it's not in depth. So I got to this one first. This was actually really impressive to see, and they had this in the gallery with all different. It's almost like it was a box of trinkets, and I was slowly looking into them because there were some things in there that I thought we could use for more specific discussions. But this was absolutely fantastic to see because it was just impressive for the time age that it is. I think, again, like I always say, we always distance ourselves from people in the past. And so when it's so old, the Middle Bronze Age, a lot of people seem to think, wow, well, this is amazing. And that they can do that in that time. And I do get myself in sort of into that trap. But then I snap back out of it and I think, oh, yes, of course, there's always going to be geniuses throughout history at any period. I think what we have a benefit of is that geniuses now can teach people, and we have access to information online, and knowing things is better. It's more better because we have better communications. Where back then it was a little bit limited. But this just shows, I think, how fantastic the craftsmanship is here if it was made by the Welsh people, the native Welsh. But this, one thing that bothers me about this is the story of this hoard. We'll never know the true story. The metal detectorists that found this was found to be quite, they were contradicting themselves a lot every time they were telling a story. Didn't really seem to add up. It showed that it wasn't credible. So we don't necessarily know where it was, and we're not sure about other details, but we know that it was from somewhere in Pembrokeshire. They just won't specify where, and that is my pet hate. I think you know this, Anne, about me.
I've been to Kears Cross because my friend lived there, and it's nothing. There's nothing there. Such a row of houses, but it's really all farmland. It's all farmland.
Yeah.
So I think there might have been a church nearby. But I can imagine it would be really difficult to pinpoint where they found it,
Yeah, it's my pet hate because it, like you said, Anne, it is a large area. And I always say to people, there was someone that came to Carl's Barry class, and while Carl nipped into the room and his car was coming in, you mentioned metal detectors, and I was like, oh, and I quickly just said to him, listen, this is something that I wish came with metal detectors, like a little handy book on the side that can tell you all the basic tips. But it's like ripping a picture out of a piece of text. So, for example, it's like I've ripped that image here, if you can see me, out of the book, and you say, oh, well done, that's a cape. It doesn't really tell us much. But if I showed you the whole text, you'd know more about it. In terms of, well, for example, here it just tells me more about the burial and the other finds and the date, and even first-hand descriptions of it. I always say that if you remove the archaeology without pinpointing it, it's just like doing that. You're taking the image out, but because you've taken the image out and you don't have any context, it means nothing. It's not that it means nothing, because we know that it came from Wales, but that could tell us more about, maybe there was a settlement nearby, maybe there was a workshop, was there ever treasure, was there royalty there? Does that make sense? It just seems like he's taken a lot of what we could know from this, and with it being a big area, it wouldn't be very simple to just cut into a chunk of it. I think you'd have to have a large amount of it covered to ensure that you found something, which is a shame, really. That I know.
The only thing about it is that it's in Pembrokeshire, and it's on the way to Milford Haven. So it's like between Haverfordwest, and then you go on the road to Milford Haven, and it's on that road. So I suppose it is different to where most of the other kind of stones and things were found, I don't think there's much else around there. So it's a bit isolated, which is a shame, because there could be something like a dwelling or a settlement.
Yeah. It's just a shame. I agree, Anne, but that I know we hear lots of things like that. I know stories from people who have worked in the profession where these metal detectorists have said, "Oh, I found this," and they've said where, and they said, "Oh, well, we found it here," but it was quite clearly they went into the field that they weren't allowed to go in and just said that they found it in the field that they were allowed to go in. And it's just frustrating. I think, yes, it's exciting and maybe you would get into trouble, but I think it's so important to say where it is. I do think the portable antiquities scheme has been fantastic for metal detectorists, though. I will say that in their defence, because even if they find something that's not of worth like this and they can keep it, at least they have it recorded online, and it's helped a lot of people with research. So I do like the fact that that's being used more and more, and even seeing things online. And I can imagine this being a very exciting find, but you'd also want to secretly keep it. But I know you would have to give it in if you value anything to do with archaeology. But like I said, this is a Middle Bronze Age hoard, and it's this gold twisted bar type thing, and they'd be twisted together into this coil, and they were in a burial, but not a burial, sorry, they were buried under the ground. So a lot of people have come up with discussions on whether that was due to it being hidden, or would that have any more significance, or someone said, did it just get dropped on the floor and this is where we found it now, or maybe someone just placed it down and forgot where it was. But it's a shame, really, that the account of the finders are less accurate, because we could tell more. And they did sort of trip up to museum archaeologists and experts as well when they were doing their further investigations. So we're not sure of the exact find spot. But this is so important. It was kept in Haverford West because it was declared treasure, and then it was purchased for the National Collection. And it just shows the amount of craftsmanship into this. And this was these gold torques. This is what they're known as. There's add significantly to the variety and the concentration of these gold torques known in Wales. So it's making it a hot spot for gold torque burials within Atlantic Europe. So that's even more information that we can know more about, and I think it allows us to know more about Wales, and I think it adds to my argument as to why Welsh history and archaeology is so significant. Maybe we could know more about its history, but this is a sign of wealthy communities at this time. So again, knowing where this is, this could be something that was nearby a high status community, and we're not sure of it. This could have been a sign of anything important, but we won't know because we can't excavate that area because we're not sure the exact find spot. But this is thought to be a hint at the mining of Welsh riverine gold ore sources during the Bronze Age. And this is just showing more as to why this community be so wealthy, and maybe even the connections that it would have without the outside world. And when you have a look at it online, it's quite frustrating because it doesn't have, like I said, it's always there's always a Wikipedia page about something. When you get to Welsh archaeology, there's nothing that you could base your basic understanding off, because I always go on Wikipedia and go further. So the best place, if you ever want a quick read of something, it is the National Museum of Wales, and this is in their collections. You can see the images, and they have different types of images, and they go quite close as well. So you can really take in the craftsmanship, and it's absolutely fantastic. And this is they even have projects on this that you can actually look into and even have a look at the photos in more detail. And like you said, Anna, it's near that area of Pembrokeshire and Milford Haven, so it was a surface find. So it'd be interesting to see if archaeologists or even experts or anyone would look closer into this, and try and see if they have LiDAR imagery of the whole area of Tiers Cross, because I think that would be quite helpful. I know there's LiDAR imagery somewhere, and it's worth a shot. Sometimes you can't find LiDAR imagery, and that drives me up the wall. But I believe, from what I could find, let me have a look at Archae maps. I can't get it up. Basically, if you have a look on Archae maps, they do have a lot of information. So they do have this evidence of maybe like some sort of settlement in the area from the LiDAR imagery. But even in the Georgian and Old Victorian maps, they have marked something off significant there. They have marked it off as saying that it's like this, they've called it a sort of Stonehenge area here, which is quite interesting, because that's something that's not been recorded when they were talking about this. But you can even look at the archaeological sites. This Archae search is absolutely fantastic with what you need to know, because it just lets you find anything. You can just literally type in anything, and it tries to bring up as much information as it can, ranging from maps to documents to sites. It's just really helpful. So anyone that is interested in that and looking at Tiers Cross in more detail, you can, because there is a lot there. It seems like it's significant there, maybe for ritual purposes, if that's the case. So I thought I'd go to this one. This was a fantastic display when I went to St. Fagans yesterday. So in this area here, you can kind of see that there's a skeleton of an individual that's lying down in there. But it was very hard to take a photo. I couldn't really find a good one online, so I just went with this. Within the displays, at the top, that it was by here, there was a lion here as well, a stone lion. And this was just beautiful to look at. It wasn't even behind glass, so you could have touched it actually, but they did have a sign saying do not touch, along with all the other stones, which I would like to look at the stones in more detail soon, possibly next week, because they're really interesting. I'm just trying to gather as many stones as I can and trying to see if there's a significance in Wales. But this was fantastic to actually look at, and like I said, the display is really fantastic. I feel like it brings history to you, and you can observe all this archaeology, and even talk about it with anyone this on duty there as well. And this came with a little bit of a story as well. There was work being done. Sorry, so if I get my notes up, I've gone off on Archae search and I can't remember where I've gone. I think that's what it is. That's what it is. So, workmen had unearthed this stone coffin in 1996 when they were digging foundations in new houses, and they found this in Oakcrest, Undy, and this coffin was containing a skeleton, but unfortunately it was incomplete. So I think that was the best way they could just kind of show it, is to be full, was that sort of way, because there was no skull from what I could tell up here. It was you could just see about this much of the skeleton if you looked at different angles. Really hard to take a photo of. I had a photo of my face basically glaring back at me in the glass. It was lovely. But they had an analysis of this, and they think that it was probably a woman, and they think that she was about 5 foot and 4 inches. And this again, you can just kind of get a sense that she was 1 inch smaller than me. So a lot of people say not that very tall, but I'm taller than her.
Tall. It's quite tall for Welsh ladies.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone in my family are like giants. Honestly, the children are passing me as well. So I thought at least I'm taller than someone, I guess. But she was around about 25 and 34 years old, which is a wide range, but it seems like that they haven't been able to further bring it down. But she's within that age range. And as they were doing the analysis, they decided to do a radiocarbon date of one of the bones that they had there. And they thought that she had died in the latter half of the 3rd or the 4th century AD. And this coffin, just looking at this as well, it was showing that she was coming from a wealthy family, because there was this use of bathstone, which was brought in on the other side of the River Severn, and it was added to the expense. And an inhumation burial like this had not always been used in Roman society as well, so this is quite significant and unique in itself. And it was kind of make me think about this whole discussion about a wealthy woman, for example. In the late 2nd century, cremation was the most common burial practice throughout the empire, but at this time it was burying the dead. And this was due to changing attitudes as well. And there was more of a belief of bodily resurrection. So the cremation was right up until the 2nd century, and then we get to the 3rd and the 4th. This is when we see burials like this, and this is something that Catholics believe as well. My family religion is Roman Catholic, so always being resurrected. We don't believe in being cremated, but this was fantastic to find out about this wealthy woman as well, and how she had this. It was this lion. I couldn't find the lion, but they called him the guardian of the tomb. He was protecting her even in her passing. And it made me think of this book that I was reading for Carl. It was called Julia Velva. It was a Roman lady from York. It's a fantastic book, a lovely book as well. And just from the image on the stone, you could see that it was her sat down with her husband and her 2 children, and you could just pinpoint more about this family, that she was a very wealthy lady in the way that she had jewelry and the way that she looked, and her husband was someone involved in authority, so he had these legal papers with them, and just sort of dissecting that was really fantastic. So even dissecting this was interesting as well, how we can know more about their beliefs, that change in beliefs here, and how this individual would have been wealthy, because this would have been an expensive coffin. And the widest part of it would have been the shoulders, and then it goes down to the feet like we see. But this is absolutely fantastic. When I looked there, I tried to see if there was anything of an inscription on the front, and it was quite difficult to see. It was quite badly preserved if there was something on there, but this was absolutely fantastic. Again, this change in attitudes, and for me that was a treasure to see. This was unique and beautiful. Just seeing that individual there.
Where was it found? Which county?
I will get it now, Anne. Sorry, I've lost it again. Ooh.
Oh, it's in
hang on. It was Undy. So if I can.
Undy. Oh right.
Yeah, a village in Wales.
Yeah, that's near Mega. You know.
Yeah.
Mega and that area around there.
Yeah. So we're not exactly far away.
Went, no, you know, and that other place that you said. Oh, Mega Pill, that's right. That's yeah,
where we found the medieval boat, which was really interesting to look into. I can really go crazy over that, but I was on a little bit of a stone coffin buzz then when I looked at that, because I found that there was another one. And I love looking at stone coffins as well. It seems like this was a very common burial at the time. This is actually a little bit earlier than the last one, and this has more or less a full skeleton here. And this is in the National Roman Legion Museum, is one of the most popular displays if you do go there. And this was a skeleton of a Roman man. So again, this is just a way of Wales showing how diverse it is, because this is a non-native Briton here. And this was made again of bathstone, like the last coffin here. So different levels of preservation. You can see that there's cracks here in this coffin as well. And from what I could see online, there wasn't much of the top of it there for them to actually salvage. But there was remains of grave goods here, and also that individual. And these grave goods would have been something that they would have kept for the past life. Maybe it was something that reminded everyone of them as well, because I think we tend to sort of put it down to this spiritual way of looking at it, that it was meant to be for their past life. And maybe when you have guardians, maybe that could be a case. But it could be things that individuals loved as well. I know a lot of people that have buried their loved ones with things that meant a lot to them, and they wanted to keep them with them. But it was this shale bowl that was there, and there was even fragments of a glass perfume or even an ointment bottle there as well. So they gave this to the date of around about 200 AD after analysing the bones. So they found a lot, and this was in the Roman cemetery just outside Caerleon. This was found in 1995 and it's been given a lot of love. And I think this is definitely, I can understand the reason why this is so favoured. And again, you can print the images off if you want to have a proper closer look inspection of this individual, but I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I think that they show the little glass ointment bottle or the perfume bottle off over here. That was a really bad drawing, but you can get the gist of it, and then you obviously have the bowl there. But I was just thinking more about the ointments. Maybe it was just their favourite scent, and that was something they wanted to keep with them, or maybe it is for them in the afterlife. I don't really see what the need is for ointment, but maybe connected to smells, maybe keeping away bad things, and that a good smell was keeping them safe, that we see with the plague, for example. But the bowl again could have had some food. They haven't done testing, so I would like to see if there was any minerals on the bowl. Sometimes they're able to do that and find out whether it was dairy products in there or anything else. But they haven't done that. But it'd be quite interesting if they could. And again, it was just one of those fantastic little treasures for me. And you can understand why it's a popular sort of attraction in this museum. And I saw these in St. Fagan's Museum. There's a lot of them, and they're absolutely fantastic to look at, because the way that they've displayed them is in this little charm section, and you kind of look at them in awe, because they do look like little treasures of gems. It was all put together, but these would have been gems that would have been on a ring, and they found a lot of these in Caerleon. Sorry, I'm trying to get up my notes, come up with silly other things that I've done. Is that it? Yes, we've fixed it. But these are absolutely fantastic. You can get copies of these as well online. This is something that I was finding when I was doing my research. A lot of people have done their own sort of versions of it, but it's this engraved gem that's put on a ring, or sometimes they put it on a necklace. These were mostly put on rings, and they're frequently referred to these intaglio. I think that's how it's said, but it's these semi-precious gemstones that would have been carved, and it would only be on one side of it. And they are really impressive. You can have them throughout history as well, but this one was one of they think of an ibis, and there was one of an eagle. It's really hard to see, but you can kind of, maybe if I get the pen and I make it a little bit more thinner, thin line, you could kind of see, oh, it's not really thin, but it goes out like that, if that makes sense. And then,
oh yeah, you can see the head.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so,
and the wings. Yeah,
it's a really bad drawing of it. It's
okay.
Yeah, the best I could do. It looks like a duck on a bodybuilder's body, personally, with the big arms. But that's all I'm getting. But this one was the first one was better preserved, and it has a little chip missing from it, which is a shame. But it's absolutely fantastic to even look at that. I think animals were very significant in this time period, even just protecting one another as well. But there was 88 of these found in the Roman baths and the drains in Caerleon, and I think that you can imagine just 88 of just going through and just finding them all the time. There's a long history with this as well. And again, you can definitely see them in all different types of cultures in all different time periods. I think that this is just a very fancy way of showing off craftsmanship, especially as further back in time that you can do it. And it can be things, we've seen them, for example, in medieval periods as well. But this is something that the philosophers have talked about this. For example, philosophers are sometimes shown on this. So people having portraits of their favourite philosopher or what they believed in, possibly. You definitely see how Alexander the Great as well talks about how he opened up new trade routes with Greece, and this would be a large amount of gemstones available. So this is something that was quite firmly in the Greek and Roman sort of history, and this has made its way to Wales. We have a little taste of that, and we actually have a large collection of them. They don't have all of them on collection in St Fagans, but you do have a good taste of all of them, and they're absolutely fantastic to look at. A lot of people have discussed what each bird could mean, because this could be something that was quite discreet, and I think this could be a connection with the native people. Rather than having philosophers, we're having birds. So there's a lot of discussions in terms of that, and some people even talk about how people are trying to apply this to other things. So there is, the ibis is meant to be a lot of things in the Roman period, and a lot of people have talked about the terms of a Roman poet talking about the ibis in this curse poem at Ovid. And again, this is the stream of violent but extreme learned abuse as well. But the identity of this ibis is quite unusual, because a lot of academics sort of go from different beliefs. A lot of people seem to think that this is something to do with the curse, but why would you wear that on here? Maybe this was something that they felt that they had some sort of relation to, but I don't think that was a right explanation of it, the fact that we're connecting it to this poetry about a curse. But a lot of people have then talked about maybe this being another bird in complete different situation. A lot of people.
Yeah, where would you find ibis? Where would you find ibis?
Well, it's almost like an ancient Egypt sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't think you find it here.
I think so.
So maybe this is something that maybe this is showing that this could mean something. If it is based on this curse poem, and this is meant to be putting a curse on those who do you wrong, maybe this is someone showing off that they know that poem. They seem to be a way of showing off something, that you know philosophy, or you know this poem, you like poetry, and so you believe that there's something bad will happen to your enemies. Maybe it's that sort of way, because it's trying to show off that you know things. Maybe this could relate to more of a high status individual. It's food for thought, but it's a good way of looking at it. And
I think there's definitely a crossover at that time of Egyptian and Roman.
Yes, well, I think we'll be knowing more stories as well. More stories coming from far away. I think the Romans, for us in Britain as a whole, opened up us to stories and information that we could only imagine in our wildest dreams. And medieval periods, we're creating maps from the Romans, and we're drawing these big beasts that we would never see before, such as lions or elephants, and we talk about it, but how would we know? And it's all from accounts of Romans that have been left behind that we were able to discuss more about. But the eagle, for example, as well, that has different things. This could tell you more about the individual, which could go with more about this high status individual sort of theory, where we're having this sense of courage and strength, and immortality, maybe, maybe their legacy will go on if they are a wealthy individual with power. But this is the king of the birds, and so this is a very significant thing as well. And this, a lot of people have called it the Aquilia, but this is standard in a lot of Roman legions that you can find, and there's a lot of iconography based on this as well. Yeah. And this could be presence of the Roman military as well, being found here, and as in more of a discussion in terms of who went to these baths and how everyone who went in those baths, they were all equal once they removed their clothes. But I think this is absolutely fantastic to actually look at this, because it just tells you more, and I would love to see all 88 of those gemstones as well. They're absolutely beautiful and fantastic to look at, and just shows how fantastic the craftsmanship is, because, for example, we can't really see much of the eagle, but you can see that there was some sort of detail at one point. But the ibis itself, how perfectly the head is, and the small mouth, and you have almost like it looks like it has feathers on it, and little feathery legs, and these tiny little feet. That's attention to detail in such a small thing to do, would be really, really difficult to do, but absolutely fantastic that we have this. So I'm glad that I was able to see that, and this is something that you can all experience if you'd like to. This is in the gallery area. But this was founded in 1979, and you can understand why this is held quite closely to a lot of people. So while I was walking around there was so much. There are a lot of things that I wanted to add that I couldn't today, which is a shame. But I remember seeing Roman game pieces, which were absolutely fantastic, and I would love to go into detail on them in general anyway. But these lead weights were absolutely fantastic to look at, because they even went into detail about the lead weights that they had. You can see the design on some of them there, and a lot of them range. But this was found in land bedrock. And this was showing more about trade. If anyone does trade about early medieval Wales, this could be a connection for it as well, and how they would have these traders bartered or exchanged goods, or even paid in silver by weight as well. And this was on display, all these on display. It was absolutely fantastic. It's a shame really, because there wasn't much to actually look at in terms of what else. Yeah, no, the early medieval period was really difficult to look at in terms of that, and it was fantastic to see all the prehistory, but the early medieval history and even some of the medieval history was quite underwhelming, because it was lacking in some sort of sense, which is a shame. But we move. I was able to enjoy everything else really. I was just being really picky. I think everyone knows what I'm like in terms of that anyway. Apologies, I think my phone's going glitchy. This is why I need to write down my notes anyway. But just looking at all this, I was in absolute awe looking at these Viking lead weights. I was looking at them and thinking there was no need to go that hard in terms of the detailing that they had. But I think it shows more about the tradesmen as well. I think it just shows how this could tell us more about how wealthy the community is, and how it was able to have more connections with other people outside. It wasn't just something that was, if that makes sense. What my dissertation is about is that we try and pinpoint areas where there is trade, and then you can find that there's more settlements with a manor house, for example, because there's more money, and then you start to find out more about the trades, and then all the individual connections with trades, and even documents. And this was found in Anglesey, so we are having a lot of discussions about Anglesey being very significant for Vikings anyway. We have lots of evidence of trade, and I think that was the first connections of trade for Vikings for a very long time, and then they started going to South Wales as well. But we're finding a lot of unique evidence of trade in Anglesey, such as the burials of individuals that were outside of Wales and either Viking or even coming from somewhere else. And it was just showing how the Vikings possibly traded with slaves, or they had a group of people with them that was working. It could be an inclination maybe of, like I said, Vikings. It's almost like it was a job title rather than a job title, and a culture rather than it being a race of people. But again, this is in connections with the Viking settlements that we have on the coast of Ireland on the east side, and how they would come over here. So it was absolutely fantastic to see all of these and how detailed they were. But this is, again, lead weight. This would have been used for weighing silver. So we're showing you how they would have traded and how things would have been sold as well. But the detail of that is absolutely fantastic when we were looking at this. And some of them are very distinctive, some of them aren't. But again, this was treasures. This was something that I wish I could have found, really. And this was found in excavation in 1996 on September the 2nd. So it wasn't found by metal detectors. So we do know exactly where it is. But again, it seems like it's been brought into that discussion already about trade. And that's all that we need to really know about it, is that it adds more to the story of trade for Anglesey. And I wanted to bring attention to these individuals here, these human remains. So that this was, oh, sorry, that I don't know why my laptop. So basically, in this area in Swansea, not Swansea, Anglesey, we found this as well, these human remains. Now, if you actually, I couldn't find both of the skeletons, unfortunately, but if you do go to St. Pancras, it's a fantastic way how they displayed them as if they were buried. So they were on top of each other. And what they've done is that they've put the male that was at the bottom, but then they have this clear elevated area to put the child's skull on there. So it was almost like they were, when you were looking down on it, that they were lying together. But then as you went to the side, you could see that they were, one of them was propped up, and so it wasn't all scattered in. And this was absolutely fantastic to look at, because it showed you what these individuals would have looked like. And again, I wish I knew more about it, but these reconstructions were quite interesting. They come up with 2 reconstructions based on what they could be. So it shows that they've really put thought into this, really, and I think that's quite significant. So the first here is the adult, what he could have possibly looked like. Ooh. And then obviously the next one is the child. It could have been either or of those. And the young man was around about age 25 to 35. And he was quite significant at his burial. So the man had cut marks to his arm and skull, which had happened to at his time of death. And his wrists appear to have been tied behind his back at this point. So he died in the 900s AD, with, like I said, the Vikings were raiding and trading here. And he was, his body had a child thrown on top of him, and it was a boy aged 9 to 14 years old. They were buried together, and that's why they're shown together. Some people have thought, are they related? But some people have actually discussed on whether these were evidence of these slaves that were used by the Vikings as well, because they seem to be a mixture. But they clearly were not free at all if their arms were tied around their backs. And it's quite interesting to see that these human remains can tell us so much more about this important trade centre and all the connections, and maybe a little bit of the dark past of our history. And it's just a shame, because we don't really know much about these individuals. We just know that they, at their time of death, maybe possibly have done something wrong, or even were just seen as property, and that's how they were buried, unfortunately. But you can find a lot of this. A lot of people have talked about the radiocarbon dating, and that they're not very sure about it, because it gave the date of around about the 700s 90 to 990. So it is a wide range. To say that it was exactly in the 900s, a lot of people get iffy over. But the man, for example, he's thought to be around about 160 to 170 centimetres tall. And you can see all different types of imagery in terms of this, and all different types of discussions. And I know Archaeology Cambrensis has some sort of focus on it as well. And people talk about this and sort of try and talk about the individuals and their heritage, where did they come from, their race. A lot of people want to find out more so they can narrow down more about this discussions of them being slaves. But really fantastic the way that they've been presented. I think it was a very it was quite, when you look at it from the top, it did look like a mess, but when you look on the side, you can see the two individuals. I think it spoke volumes, because the young child there as well, but the fact that they put the reconstructions right next to them, you can kind of see who these individuals were, and they could have been our ancestors, for example. But they clearly had some sort of whack to them to actually kill them. So the next one that I wanted to look at, which was absolutely fantastic, isn't in St. Fagans, but it's still a fantastic discovery nonetheless, and really interesting to actually look at. It really was. It was something that I really enjoyed looking into and finding more about. This was found, well, in 2015, but it was discussed in 2016. And it was a metal detectorist, Walter Hank, that had found this in Llangrog. And this hole that they had a range of things. There was coins there that was dating back to the time of King Canute. You even had ingot put in there. I believe that there was 14 silver pennies that was produced to Dublin under the Hiberno-Scandinavian ruler Alfonso. Basically, this was how the find was found, and it was very interesting. Again, shows that connection that we had with through the Irish Sea, and definitely a significant find. So this was discovered in Gwynedd, and it's going for it did go on display in Cardiff. It wasn't in St. Fagans. I believe it was the Story Museum. And this fantastic find that was dating back 1,000 years ago really shows you a different type of history. And again, the coins, how this can tell us a lot as well. And this Hiberno North Scandinavian sort of feel to it as well, where we're having connections from the Irish Sea with other individuals. And I think it just cements this idea where people see the Vikings as being quite dangerous and quite reckless. We see them in another sense, I think, in Wales, because we were marginalised as well, and we had similar sort of beliefs as them. I think that was why they were able to trade with us. And even listen to their stories. But there was 8 coins there that was dating back to 995 AD, and there was another 6 then that would have been produced from 1018 AD. But the hoard was buried around about 1025 AD. And our favourite medieval archaeologist, Mark Redknapp, he's the head of collections and research in the National Museum of Wales. He had a say on this. He always has a nice little thing to say about things, which I like, because he adds more to the discussion. But he said that this is showing that Wales has a large evidence of hoards, showing how Wales is full of archaeological adventures and treasures, and that we should explore more. Possibly we could find out more. But obviously when we get to 2019, that's when people are getting out more. Not 2019, 2020, and people were finding more and more, and it was coming out in the news, and it just seems to go dry a little bit more at the moment. So hopefully the more comes out. But this hoard is amplifying the picture that we're building of the economy and the wealth of the operating kingdom of Gwynedd in this 11th century, which is the 1000s. And it also shows that this would be an important thing to actually look at. And this was compared in the little exhibition that they had. It was next to a Roman hoard of coins from Sully. And there was even silver from the wreck of Anne Francis, which was lost on Margam Beach in 1583. And there was even brought in at one point next to the remains of this. But it was fantastic to look at and see all of that as well. And I think it just tells us more about the connections that we had. It just cements that argument that we had a strong relationship with Ireland. Even when there was new people living in the area, they knew about us. And I wanted to get to this as well, because this is something that I really enjoyed as well, was looking into this. And there's even discussions, for example, on how it was worn. Some people think that that your head basically comes out here. Draw a very awful individual, probably look like so worn like that, and then you have the hands sticking out here, and then the body there, say for example, and that's their arms. That's how some people believe that this was worn, and there is a debate on this. I think that's what I love about sometimes about archaeology, is that they'll debate on the most littlest of things. And then another theory was that and I don't really necessarily agree with this theory, that it was worn the other way around, so upside down, and that I tried to figure out how it was worn, that it was sort of like this individual's body was kind of like this, and then his body was in it like that. But then with the curve, my argument is that it isn't that, because just draw the ego, fantastic drawing, that's meant to be a person and their body. Smiley face there. I don't necessarily agree with that, because the way that this sticks out, this would have been a pain in the bottom either way, whether it was coming out from the hip or even the arms. This sticking out bit here would have just been a pain to wear, and so it would have made sense to have something a little bit more closer to your body. But again, we like the discussions. I think a lot of people have talked about this because of what was first thought, this being a breastplate of a British chieftain, for example. And you even have this legendary prince of medieval Powys that gets brought into this discussion. But this was found in the 1800s, so if we skip back a little bit before all these discussions, the cape was discovered on the 11th of October 1833, and it was at Bryn Ilion, I think that's how it's said, in the eastern outskirts of Mold in Flintshire. And there was workmen that was employed there to filling up in a gravel pit at the side of the road, and they uncovered this crushed gold object at the side of this stony bank. And the gold cape was found in this poorly lined grave, around this the poorly remained preserves of remains of a human skeleton. And you can imagine just seeing this would have been fantastic. There was lots of amber beads that were found laid out in rows upon the cape as well. And these pieces of woven cloth were also attached to the cape, but they did not survive from this time period. And I believe the amber pieces are actually gone as well, which is a shame, because some of the finds become separated and lost. But the main fragment of these gold sheets were acquired by the British Museum in 1836. And I think there's a problem that we see in terms of the 1800s. A lot of things go missing. A lot of things are gone and lost forever. And it's just a shame, because we could learn so much more about this, but we can't. But it was good that the British Museum actually purchased this, because it was allowing a better sense of protection. But there was additional surviving finds that was associated with the burial, such as a bronze knife, a bronze backing strip, and a single amber bead. One single amber bead out of the large amount that they had found, only one they had. And this burial was laid beneath a circular tumulus, or a cairn of stones. And this monument would have been large. It would have been about 28 meters in diameter. And this would have used a lot of labor to actually build. So possibly this is an individual that was quite respected and big in society at this time. But again, a vicar talks about this. He had a report of this, Charles Butler Cloth, and he formed an important piece of work, because he just talks more about the find. So we're going to actually listen to a small extract from his letter. The spot where it was found is a small gravel bank, of which there is several little distance from the River Allen in the Vale of Mold. So maybe this burial was kind of sort of looking down possibly at where it is, looking down at this river, maybe showing the connections that it would have had there as well. But this is one of the finest achievements in the gold craftsmanship of prehistoric Europe. This is fantastic. This is the Bronze Age. So it is in the British Museum. I think we should call for it to come back to Wales personally. It would be absolutely fantastic to have possibly in St Fagans or even where it's been found, having a museum based around that. But I think the British Museum should give it back because this is fantastic. This is really interesting because a lot of people think that this monument that he was buried in beforehand, before they found this, they thought this was an area that was tormented by goblins. Folklore talks about this association with this place of a man of this gigantic size, and he's been seen to be standing on top of the grave, and a lot of people think that there's an apparition of a boy as well, and he's dressed in gold, and he's also been found near the mound, the mound as well, which is quite interesting. So a little bit of ghost and folklore there. Some people have argued that this is a ceremonial cape. So like I said, this would have been something that would have been worn by a chieftain, maybe a high individual in this area. In the 1950s, there was new research that talked about trying to understand the fragments of this gold cape, and that they think that it was ceremonial because this would have been difficult to fight in if it was over your shoulder. You're quite restricted with your arms. Maybe this would have been something for ceremonial, maybe for special events with the community, maybe helping, maybe little rituals they could have possibly had with individuals in the community of that coming of age as well. But there is reconstructions that the British Museum have done in the 1960s, but they have done more recent ones in 2002. And in the 1950s and 60s, there seemed to be a large discussion on how it was worn. But there were draped along here these amber beads, which would have been absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful to look at now anyway. You can imagine all the beads all perfectly laid out and draping down there. And this is absolutely fantastic. It just paved the way for more reconstructions to be made of this. And a lot of people have really tried. There's also a letter from an individual, which we will read in a bit now. But we will never know who made the cape. We can say possibly that the maker is highly skilled, and we can see that. And you see how there's this gold, embossed gold working tradition here that originated in Britain and Ireland. So we know that this would have been possibly local, but it's thought to be made in the early Bronze Age. And some of the fragments here that we see of the sheet gold of the grave do not belong to the restored cape. So you can see that they've tried to reconstruct other things as well to try and get as much. But the early century records suggest another possible gold cape that was discovered nearby as well. And this was written in a letter that was dated in 1694, and this was from Richard Moyston. He was an antiquarian, and he was talking to Edward Food, and he says, a piece of antiquity found not far from Wrexham, about 2 years since, 'twas a gold like an officer's corselet. So a lot of people seem to think that he could possibly be talking about another cape as well. The archaeological survey that they have has revealed an unusual concentration of Neolithic ritual monuments and early Bronze Age burial monuments, and along this valley that they have in the North Flintshire Plateau. And when they were looking at the archaeological investigation, 2 sites along this valley proved particularly interesting for experts. So 1.5 miles away from Mould, a large burial monument was excavated by the Flintshire Historical Society, and this was excavated between 1954 to 1956, and they found this fantastic jet necklace of an early Bronze Age date that had been scattered amongst the stones of the cairn, which had overlaid this female skeleton that they had. It's absolutely fantastic, really. It was a large burial. It would have had been 44 meters in diameter. There was even charcoal remains found in the possible coffin that they had, and they were able to radiocarbon date this to 2400 to 2130 BC. But there is early and nearby graves near the area. So this is shown that this was occupied by vibrant prehistoric communities that were expressing themselves in a very distinctive culturally, and they controlled the movement of valued objects flowing into and through the region. So you see a lot of stone axes, mace heads, early metal axes, knives, daggers, gold, jet, and even amber ornaments. And these communities directed their wealth and efforts to spiritual ends. And we can suggest that these capes they have, the wearers were powerful religious leaders. Maybe they were highly respected individuals in society, but they were living in the heart of a long-established ceremonial centre or domain as well. And a lot of people have discussed where the gold have come from in terms of this. The cape is around about 700 grams of gold, so 1.5 pounds, making it the heaviest early Bronze Age object in Britain. But when they were analysing this, they showed that the gold had a high silver content as well, which is probably an occurring signature here. And this would, gathering the amount of gold was both an achievement and a power statement. A new and rich neighbouring gold source may have been accessed during this time. So future research that we might have may pinpoint the exact location of this gold. But at the moment, it seems to be something that's quite debated. There is a copper miners at Great Orme in Llandudno on Anglesey in Mid Wales that passed through this region, and they had a lot of bronze casting workshops there, but they have found a small amount of Roman gold ingots there, so they have kind of questioned on whether there was a small amount of gold that's gone now. But there was also this was a prime strategic location here for the movement of copper and gold for the high status individuals. We definitely see how Isdol Galley, the gold belt is there as well. You've got Great Orme as well, and you even see how it all pushes in this movement of gold. And you can find more out online. It's definitely something that's quite interesting to look at, and it is interesting to see the debates around it as well, but just don't go around too much of a rabbit hole. But what I hope that I've shown you is that there's a wide range of archaeology in Wales, and this is reflecting a lot on the economic situation, maybe possibly the religious and the political situation of individuals, their social aspects, all in the Welsh history and archaeology. And this can tell us more than what documents could ever do. And I think this is just giving us an understanding of the past, this tangible, and it just shows how diverse the history is as well, how it can tell us so much. But this is a place of fantastic traders. This is a place of fantastic craftsmen. This is a place of important people. And throughout history, it shows this country it shows to be important. And I think this is why the Normans felt like they wanted to get to Wales, because they could establish more of their power. And they were correct. This was an important place to get on side. The Vikings were able to do it, and they were able to have close connections with Ireland. And I think if you have Wales and all the other marginalised areas under your wing, then maybe you can have more power, because Wales is a very special place, culturally, economically, and even in terms of the skills as available, even the fantastic ideas that seems to be shared with other groups of people through trade as well. So what I'll do, I'll stop sharing and I'll ask Anne, is there anything that you'd like to add to this, or maybe even ask?
Well, it was very interesting talk anyway, and it sort of made me feel I want to go to St. Fagans. I still haven't been to St. Fagans since they've done the new galleries, but I would love to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely fantastic.
Yeah, and you know, I just think that the museums now have had to realise that, you know, they have to make room really for more archaeology, you know, like there's going to be more medieval stuff, you know, and
yeah,
because they're very, very sparse, aren't they, the modern museums?
Yeah.
And, you know, just like you say, individual things, but they do keep these artifacts as well. So
Yeah.
let's hope we'll have a better comprehensive view of our treasures eventually. You know,
Yeah.
it's been nice. You know, I'll certainly go and have a look at Tears Cross.
Definitely, and possibly go into some investigation about that as well. Because it does make me want to look more into the light imagery. I could do that for hours. But I'll send a link over to the Archae search as well once I get it up. Unfortunately, I can't get off of the laptop and do other things while I'm on Zoom. It just goes all funny. So I'll show that and I'll send it to you directly, or even put it on the Facebook group. But thank you, Anne. I think Tears Crossed could be something that we could have a little project on and try and see if we can find out as much as we can about that there. Because it definitely try and pinpoint where that could have been found.
Also, what you know, why was that Roman grave in Undy? You know, I mean, I feel that there must be, you know, there must have been a house or a Roman villa or something nearby. You know. Because it's like on the other side of, away from Pillion, you know, it's towards, well, on the way to Chepstow, really.
Yeah, it's quite significant. I think this is one that I was trying to say, that we have so much in our collections that we kind of
start researching it.
That's what I think. Maybe have a hold on the excavations and sit there with what you actually have and try and actually understand it, rather than saying, oh yeah, Roman man, this age, put it that way. What does that mean in terms of the landscape? And I think that's something that you can do with Portable Antiquity Scheme. Is that what I've been doing? Is that I've been looking at all the finds and trying to relate it back to the area and the landscape. Is there a manor house nearby? Is there a place of trade? Is there a settlement? That's what I try. You've got to try and do it that way. Otherwise, again, it means nothing. So we could add more context to something else that we could try and find out about. Maybe be interested to see if I can try and put that into the Archae search and see if there's any light art imagery in terms of that as well. They're like little crumbs that we can kind of bite and sort of find more information on. So I think the collections online on the National Museum of Wales, they're good, but they could go into more detail, really. It would be really interesting to look into all of that. But I think we've come up with some good ideas in terms of that. I think possibly there's something significant going on in Undy, and maybe we'll try and find that out. But thank you. Pat, anything that you'd like to
I'd like you, if you don't mind, to just have a quick little review of just the name of all the different things, you know, like the lead weights, the human remains. I was trying to remember what they all were. Can you go back on your slides and just go?
I'm sorry, hang on, I'm clicking on something and I'm not sure what. Oh, there you go, I've got it there. So hang on.
I like a review.
No, that's fine. If I click that button there, so obviously the Tears Cross hoard.
Tears Cross,
A fantastic little piece there. The way they showed that off was absolutely gorgeous. The tomb of the Roman woman, which really took me by my heart as well. I was trying to see if there was more inscriptions like Julia Velva's grave, but it seems like that it's badly preserved in terms of that. And then you have this burial here, the tomb of a Roman man, different areas as well, but it shows that something was going on in both of these areas for them to be buried. But this individual had more grave goods, which is what I think is very significant, but a reason why more people like this, possibly because we can find more information about it. And then you have these fantastic intaglios. Again, can tell us more about the motifs. Maybe the ibis could be something that an individual saying that they know poetry, and this is poetry of an ibis being related to a curse. Maybe it is a high status way of showing that I can read, and the eagle itself is a sign of power, courage, and it could all relate to a high status individual. But they're fantastic craftsmanship put into these gemstones, and even the ibis, you can kind of see the feathers that are being created from the fantastic craftsmanship there as well. And then you have these fantastic Viking lead weights with these fantastic designs on them. I think, again, the designs could show you more about the advanced traders in society. Maybe they had more money to have a different type of carving on it, so they could show what was theirs. But this was showing that we were trading with silver, possibly as well, with the Vikings, and they had these lead weights. This was in Anglesey in Labrengorch, which is where we find these individuals here, and they had their arms tied behind their backs. One was 25 to 35, and one was 9 to 14, I believe. And they were buried on top of each other in the same area. And a lot of people have argued that this was Viking slaves, or maybe individuals who have done something bad in society. But this is on the outside ramparts, the important trading centre of this area as well. And then you have this Viking hoard as well, which is showing connections with the Vikings who were from the Irish Sea, from Ireland. And you have this Hiberno-Scandinavian sort of the ruler on here as well. And you can see how there's different types of coins. You have 8 coins that are dating back to 995, and that you have some that are 6 that are being produced from 1118 AD. And I think that this hoard was this hoard was buried among around about 1025. And then you have this fantastic mold cape, and you can imagine the beautiful amber beads draped on it, and we only have one left because it was the 1800s and people tend to lose things at this time. It's typical, but this is thought to be a ceremonial dress, and it's showing a lot of religious connections, maybe ritualistic, maybe worn at important events. But this is in the British Museum in London. I think they should bring it back here to Wales. So yes, this is all that I had shown off to today, Pat.
Yeah,
I hope that was all right for you there, and I gave a little summary.
I appreciate it.
It's all right. It's all right. Thank you, Pat. And Richard, anything from you?
Yeah, no, really interesting. I say, especially with the, finding the Roman coffins and everything.
Yeah, they're fantastic finds.
When apparently I think it was in the Second World War, they found a lead coffin in Bali with a Roman skeleton in it. Oh. And apparently someone took the lead and melted it down to scrap.
Oh, yeah, oh gosh. It's definitely a time period where you kind of want to grab what you get.
It's surprised, there's still a hell of a lot of Roman stuff. Must be there to be found,
Yeah, I think it's very significant area. We've attracted Romans, Normans, we've had the Anglo-Saxons having a go, the Vikings. I think we're an area that have attracted a lot of cultures and different types of people, even just down to our trading in the Mediterranean and continental Europe. Even I think I read something about connections in terms of Iberia as well, which is quite interesting. But it shows that we're well connected. I think we're attracting lots of people, and I think it's finding out as to why. We had good industry as well, and I think the narratives that we have based on that doesn't really seem to fit the archaeology. Yeah, definitely I think there could be a focus is trying to counteract what E.A. Lewis talks about. They talk about how trade was basically non-existent, more or less, when we were in the earlier parts, for example, our early history. And then when you get to the later medieval period after the Normans, that's when it booms. And that's not necessarily true, really. There's, I think we've always had connections with Ireland. We've always had connections with other groups of people, and it's only just flourished as we get to the Romans as well onwards, and we really take on what the Romans had left behind for us. I think that's a significant, whenever you're looking at trade, I think possibly in the medieval period, always look at Roman sites, especially the Normans, they flocked to Roman sites. It was less labour to create other buildings out of stone if they already had stone there, or maybe even part of a fortress there as well. So we saw with Portchester, didn't we, Anne?
Yeah.
Roman fortress that had been turned into a castle in the medieval period, and then served as a prisoner of war place, wasn't it, Anne? In the right up into the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely interesting. So thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone for coming this evening, and I'll hopefully see you next week, and I'll see you tomorrow, Anne.
Yeah,
and have a lovely evening all, and take care.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
and
you
Anne,
for
it's okay if
seconds.
Glenda comes. Anne?
Sorry?
Glenda, we can meet with Glenda if you want.
Oh, I'll see what's happening. I'll let you know.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, give me a ring.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. All righty. Bye then.
Nosta.
Nosta. Right.
Thank you everyone for that. Like and subscribe. Even share this if you want. We like getting information and archaeology out there, and maybe there's someone out there that wants to focus on this and bring more of a discussion of these fantastic finds that are fantastic and really interesting to talk about. Unfortunately, they lack that discussion, and so it'd be fantastic to see if this inspires anyone in the future. So take care.